Happy Saturday, everybody. I hope you're all well on this Easter Saturday. So, I had said I was going to talk about losing my dad, and I was thinking about it a lot. And I'm a real go with my gut, go with my instinct type person. So, I don't know, I'm not feeling that at the moment. What I want to talk about, I think, maybe is the before that, how I came into the world a little bit, just to give a little bit of a background about my mum and my dad and where I come from and, my family, a little bit about my family. Um, so basically, my mum and dad met in a factory where they were working in Dublin. My dad came over from England when he was 12 with his parents and his siblings. He came from Leicester and a place called Shepshed, beautiful place called Shepshed, and he was born in Leicester, so he was from Leicestershire and had that accent always until he died, and all his siblings did as well. Interesting. So he came to Ireland when he was, well, they say 10 or 12, nobody really knows. And his parents moved from house to house. They'd do up a house and then they'd move to the next one, do it up, move to the next one. And my dad celebrated his 22nd birthday in his 21st birthday in the 22nd house. So that's basically he was terrified of ghosts and things like that, apparently, because of experiences in these big old houses. And then my mum came from Dublin, a place called Ballybowden in Rathfarnham. Actually, she came from Rathfarnham, from a place called St. Patrick's Cottages. I love that name. And her mum came from Ballybowden in Rathfarnham. And her mum's parents died very young, so she was brought up by her aunt and her uncle. So and then my mum's dad was from Kildare, and then they moved to Dolphin's Barn. So he's his mum would say they're from Kildare and then Dolphin's Barn. So so mum actually has a story about Dolphin's Barn. Mum is the eldest out of 8 children, and my dad was the third out of 4, and the fourth in his family was adopted. And I loved her so much. I absolutely loved her. So basically, Mum has a story that when during World War II, would it be World War II? She was in bed in her grandparents' house in Dolphin's Barn, and the Germans dropped a bomb on the synagogue, and she fell out of bed. So that was just, a little thing to the side. But anyway, but they both met when my mum was kind of a worker in some factory. I don't even know. Probably a clothes factory. Dad was her manager. The boss found out that they were going out, so then she had to leave, or he had to leave, or whatever. So he chased my mother like crazy, and she kept running and he kept chasing her, and eventually, anyway, they ended up together. And so they got married in 1955. My mum was absolutely stunning. Oh my God, she was so beautiful. She was like a film star. And she was just, oh God, I think my mum is beautiful anyway. But they got married in Rathfarnham, and they moved to Stillorgan and rented a house in Stillorgan, where now there's a shopping centre there, but they were cottages at the time, and they rented there until they bought where the family home is in Dundrum. And my mum, once you got married in those days, you weren't allowed work. So she was just bored. So she was all the way over in this place, Stillorgan, and she used to then walk all the way to her mum's in Rathfarnham nearly every day to see her mum. So in those days, obviously, you got married and you had children. So, she got pregnant and she had her first boy, John. And John was 4 days old and mum had never seen him. So he was born too early, and then when mum was about to go down, a nurse brought her down to the room where he was in the incubator, and as she was about to go in, a matron came out and said, "What is she doing here?" And the nurse said she wants to see her baby, and she said, "Well, her baby's just died, so bring her back to bed." So my mum went back to bed, and she wasn't even allowed to attend his funeral. And so my dad and my uncle Seamus brought him, had the funeral. So it was very kind of quick and whatever. So he is, he has a grave site and everything, with my dad's mum and dad. So that's where I'd like to be. It's with John and Granny and Granddad. So anyway, my mum was devastated, obviously, and it was, I think, I'm not sure when, but it was a couple of years later then she had my eldest sister, Jeanette, and she was delighted with her. And then she had my brother, Stephen, and they were literally kind of one after the other, like literally a year. There's a year between them all kind of thing. And then she had my sister, Caroline, and then she had my sister Anne-Marie, and then she had my brother Paul. And when Paul was born, the nurse said that mum said, "I think I need to have the baby. I think the baby's ready to come." And the nurse said, "It's midnight, go to sleep, you'll wake everybody up." And mum, being mum, was really shy, and the next morning, it was around 6 o'clock, the doctor was doing the rounds, and he said that woman's in an awful state. And my brother was born, and he looked perfect, and he looked completely okay. And they realized as he was growing that he was not growing slower, but he was not as fast with his speech and his walking and all of that as other children his age. So he basically was born, in those days we called it mentally handicapped. So Paul had special needs. And then my brother Eamon was born, and he was born in Australia. So my dad was he was a professional, like a plumber, electrician and carpenter. So he was basically a builder, but as an electrician he went over to Australia. So they all got the boat over. So there was 5 of them going over on the boat. It took 3 months to go over to Australia, and my brother Eamon was born in Australia, and then they came back with him. And then I was born 69, 70, 3 years later, something like that. So my brother was 3.5 when I was born. So I always was told that, Niamh, I came from God, and then I came from a hospital. So I used to think then you'd go into a hospital and there'd be all these babies and mum and dad would pick one. But I thought in my case, because they'd come from Australia, that they came home and found me on the kitchen table. That's what I always thought. And they came in with all their bags and cases, kind of like they'd been shopping, come in from being in Australia, and there I was on the table. That's what I thought growing up, as a very young kid. And but so I then when I was born, mum was very nervous because of Paul. I was born in the Coombe because she changed hospitals. So but when she was in with me, she had high blood pressure. She got that actually very young, in her 20s, with my brother Stephen. She got high blood pressure with him. So she was about 28 or something like that. So she had high blood pressure, and she was quite stressed with me. And so she had to go into hospital quite a bit and stay there for rest and things like that, which was even more stressful because she had all the kids at home. My dad worked around the clock, and then Paul obviously really needed her. So she was in there with me, and then I think her mum was minding my siblings. And I was born then by section. I was born sucking my thumb. I still suck my thumb. It just calms me instantly. So I was born by cesarean section, and I think I was 6 pounds 3 or something. I was the biggest baby at 6'3", and so I'm born, and when she had to rest then a little bit afterwards, but when I was born they had to tell my mum that my brother Paul was in hospital and they didn't know if he'd survive because his appendix had burst. He was 7, so now he was in some children's hospital. I'm not sure exactly where, maybe Temple Street or something, and so mum had to go. Instead of coming home with me, she had to go straight into the hospital. And they said he hadn't eaten in days. I mean, he was fretting for her, I would say. He was really fretting as well as everything else. And it had gone into sepsis and everything. And there wasn't much hope. But she went in and they said, he's not eating. We can't, we don't know what to do. And he started eating from my mum. So she stayed in with him. So I was shipped off home to my mum's mum and my siblings. So there I was at home and all the rest. So I think my brother came home maybe after a couple of weeks. And I was told afterwards, a couple of years ago by one of my sisters that I was put upstairs in mum and dad's bedroom, and the door was locked, and I'd be left in the cot to go to sleep or whatever during the day. But I was left there and locked in in case my brother Paul went in, I don't know, and threw something at me or whatever. I mean, he was only 7 when I think of it. Now, he used to, when I got a little bit older and I was walking, he'd come behind me and push me and knock me down, and thought that was hilarious and things like that. So, and then he used to throw things out the bathroom window, like, so if you couldn't find your toothbrush or your hairbrush or toothpaste, whatever, you'd have to go down to the back garden and see was it out in the garden and throw stuff out. And he used to flood the kitchen, and he just turned the tap on and put the stopper in, and we'd walk out and the kitchen would be flooded, and upstairs the bath would be flooded. So he was a little he was mischievous, you know what I mean, and he found all this hilarious. But so anyway, they said he had the mentality of a 2-year-old. When he when they were in Australia, that was his first epileptic fit. So he had epilepsy, so he had brain damage from birth. So that's what happened. So I was put in there anyway, and to keep me safe. And one day mum was down putting clothes on the line, and she just got this feeling over her, and she screamed, "The baby, get the baby." And my sister, the eldest sister, ran upstairs, opened the door and ran in, and my eyes were gone completely black. My lips were blue, and I was blue. My eyes were back. You could just see the white of my eyes. So I was always told it was a cot death, and then I was kind of saved. My mum and dad, I think, brought me down to the GP who lived on the same road, and he just said, "Get her into the hospital now." And when they were bringing me through the hospital, they were ripping open my thing and checking me. But during COVID, I actually contacted Crumlin Hospital and asked for my data about what had really happened. And the files said that I was only 6 weeks old, and I must have had a cough that turned into a chest infection, and the chest infection turned into pneumonia. So it's the kind of pneumonia that kills. It's the biggest, death thing for children is this pneumonia. I don't know if there's different types of pneumonia, but anyway, I had pneumonia. So I was in hospital then for a few weeks. I think I was in for 6 weeks, something like that. And it was all very detailed how much I ate. Oh my God, like a millimeter of milk I wasn't eating. I was on every antibiotic. I was on so many intravenous drugs. In those days, I was on so much stuff. So anyway, I came home. So I was born 17th of November. So whatever 6 weeks is after that. And I think, I don't know, like, anyway, I'm sure I was home for Christmas or whatever. I'm not too sure, but it was just a very hustly, bustly house. There was always something going on. The front doors had to be on a chain or locked in case my brother got out. And there was always a dog, and there was always a cat, and there was always a dog getting out. And where's the cat? And let the cat in and feed the cat. And I loved it. I absolutely loved the hustle and bustle. I loved it. I loved being part of a big family. I adored all of my siblings. I absolutely adored them. I adored my mum and I adored my dad. And if I was to pick a favourite person out of all of them at that time, I think it would have been my dad. I know it was my dad. I had this immediate like, I don't know if it's bonding, but I had this immediate thing with my dad where when he went to work, I had this fear that he wouldn't come back. He used to drop me to school and I was always afraid something would happen to him afterwards. I had this separation anxiety from very young. And, I was fine. Like, I went to play school I always say this and it sounds a bit strange, but it's true. But I was reading and writing at 3 because I was sent to play school. I think I was around 2 and a bit because my mum had to do a lot with my brother Paul every day. Now, I worked in Trinity a couple of years back, and I was actually, one of the women came up to me and she said, I'm a physiotherapist. She was a lecturer in Trinity. She said, I'm a physiotherapist. She was a neighbour opposite us. And she said, the reason I am is because of your brother Paul. And she said, I just knew, I didn't know the ins and outs of what went on in my home. But she said her and her friend used to volunteer and come over and help my brother. So my brother was told he'd never walk and he'd never talk and he'd never whatever, but they used to stretch his legs and do physio. I really don't know 100% what it was, but I know that my mum and dad had brought him to America, and they on the way back from Australia they brought him to specialists in Africa. They went to Africa, they went to America and all the rest, and I don't know if they gave them details of what to do with them or whatever, but he got physio, and it was always just neighbours, like women coming in and doing it. So this particular neighbour who was a lecturer in Trinity, she said that's why she did it, because her and a friend went over maybe, I don't know, a couple of times a week, and they loved it. And she said, you were such a good kid, you used to be in the kitchen in a high chair. So my sister told me a couple of years ago as well, she said, you used to, I was telling her this story, and she said, well, you literally were fed, put in the high chair, and then my mum and whoever neighbours were in would go into this other room and do my brother. I don't know why I wasn't brought into the same room while they were doing it, but maybe it was too cold or something. I really don't know. We used to call it the playroom. It was the playroom. So I would be left, and apparently I was really quiet. I was good. Like, I was just happy and quiet, and I just sat in the kitchen. There was no TV in the kitchen or anything like that. And I would have been a few months old, and so when I got to, so it's not shocking to say when I got to around 2 or whatever, I remember going down to Mrs. Kelly, and oh my gosh, in the area, and my mum used to walk me down. My mum was so good. Like, when I think of it, she'd walk me there I don't know who minded my brother while she was doing it, but she'd walk me to my play school. And it was probably from, I don't know, I'm going to say 9 o'clock until 1 o'clock or something like that. And so I was learning there. I used to sit there, and there was another lovely woman called, I can't remember her name, but she'd short hair and she'd a mole on the back of her neck. And I used to always press her little mole, and she'd be telling us stories. And then, you know, I just absolutely loved it. And the girls there were lovely. And there was Amanda, who was Mrs. Kelly's daughter. She was so pretty and beautiful, and she had the hair, she had the long blonde hair, and she always had her hairband, and she was just gorgeous in her little dresses. And then there was a girl called Paula, and then there was another girl called Susan. I do remember, I just loved it. And I remember in play school as well, we'd be learning to write, and I'm left-handed, and I kind of write like that. And I remember the brother, you know, so Amanda's brother, she had a brother and sister, and I think that's all. Maybe she has more, but I just remember the sister would come home from school. They must have come home at lunchtime or something, I'm not sure, but they'd come home from school, and Kenny, her brother, he might have been 5. Oh, I was absolutely in love with him. I thought he was just fabulous, and I wanted him to teach me to write. So I used to be saying, when he'd come in, I was delighted, and he'd teach me how to write and help my hand move the pencil and everything. But I loved it. I just remember stories, and we'd learn songs, and it was in Mrs. Kelly's house. And it was you go in, and she had like where the garage is, and that was it. And the back garden, and they had this, you know, we had a normal clothesline, but they had the one with the stick, and you know, the one that you stick in the ground. And I thought this was fabulous. And then they had obviously swings and stuff like that. And up to a couple of years ago, they still had the line. I'm convinced it's the same line, but out in the garden to hang clothes out to anyone who doesn't know what that is. So I was very interested then in school. So when I started school then, I remember we got our books, say in the June or something, you get your books, and I remember sitting at the table, and I had them all read. It was unbelievable. I had them all read, and I was like, okay, what's next, kind of thing. I loved school, absolutely. School to me was I suppose it's where I got attention. I got attention from teachers. I got attention I had friends, because when I was growing up, obviously all the neighbours were much older, or now next door, they moved when I was 3, they moved in, but they were younger than me. So like my next door neighbour was my cousin, and I loved playing with her, but I wasn't allowed out to play all the time. So I wanted to live in an area where everyone's just out on the streets. And if I had brothers and sisters my own age, I'm sure I would have been allowed out a lot more. So I used to pester my mum to go out and play. So for me, school was, oh my God, friends on tap. It was brilliant. Loved it. Surrounded by people. And learning. I loved learning. I still love learning. I hated homework. Absolutely never liked homework. I mean, that was one thing I struggled with my whole entire life, but I loved learning. But I loved the laughing. I was clown of the class. I loved school so much. But so I want to just say, so basically I was born into this family. I will talk about my school. Oh God, I'll talk about my school, and I'm sure my school friends will love reminiscing about school and my first day at school. And but basically from the time I was born, so I got my pneumonia and all of that, and I came back, and it was just hustle and bustle, and my mum was very busy with my brother. And I've been asked by therapists over the years, and are you angry or do you resent your brother? Absolutely not. I absolutely adored him. And he was at all my birthday parties. Obviously, he was at all my birthday parties. He was at my birthday. And people can tell you, like my friends who came to the birthday party, especially a girl called Janice, she loved him, and he used to chase them all around the place, and they loved it. He chased them to try and push them over, and then he'd think this was funny. And he was just, like, a child like that is very special in a family, and it really makes people, it forms a different type of family. I don't know, I think we were very blessed to be given him on loan by God. He was just an absolute, my mother literally idolized the ground he walked on. She adored him so much. I loved him. I loved him so much. He used to melt my heart, and very young. And when I was like, again, very young, I could have been 6, 7, 8, and I used to put him to bed. I used to be putting him to bed, and you'd make him go to the toilet, and then you'd put him into bed. And I just loved him. And then we'd say, "O angel of God, my guardian dear, to whom God's love commits me here, ever this day be at my side, to light and guard, to rule and guide. Amen." And you'd say, "O angel of," and he'd go, "Ugh." That's, and my guardian, ugh. He's just, and then, he used to go, "Ki," and "Ki," meant kiss. And he'd do this for you to give him a kiss. I often say my childhood, within my family, within my home, and the siblings I was given and all of that, I just adored them all. I absolutely loved my life. I loved my life. I loved Saturdays, the fire lighting. You have to go up and have a bath. You come back down, and Dallas was on. I wasn't allowed to watch it, but if I stayed quiet enough and held my breath, Mum might notice I actually was there. But there's other sides to it, whereas all my family would be watching stuff on a Saturday night or whatever, and I'd be sent to bed like on my own. I was afraid of the dark. I did feel a little bit separate from the family because they were all older. And then I wanted to share a room with my brother next to my age. And so I actually, until I was 8, believe it or not, no, I'm trying to think. Until I was 8, I was in with Mum and Dad. Then I went in with my 2 brothers. And then when I was, I can't remember then, I was probably maybe 10. And I went up to I wasn't. I was about 9, and my sister got married. And then I was able to go up to the attic. That's what it was. And then, and then when I was, my brother Paul was in the box room. But look, do you know what? I just loved it. I loved it. I didn't like being on my own. I didn't like being the youngest. I always begged Mum and Dad to adopt. I did feel lonely in my childhood, in the sense of I loved the hustle and bustle, but it was like I was like this little child looking out at them all. But I was surrounded by something, a bubble, and it was like I was just watching. I didn't feel part of, really. I have to be honest, like, Mum always said it, like, I was a very good child. I was quiet. I was funny. I was like I loved joking and dancing and singing and everything. But I loved everybody. I mean, I loved animals. I loved worms. I loved my teachers. I loved my friends in school. I loved everybody and everything. Really and truly, I mean that. From the age of 4, my granny died when I was around 4. And I remember my mum being really upset. And I wasn't very close to my grandmother. We called her Naggy, not because she was a nag, but that's my eldest cousin. Couldn't say granny, so they called her Naggy. And I remember my mum adored her mum, like she was really, really close to her mother. But I remember I didn't know she was my mum's mum because I was too young. I didn't know she was my granny. I didn't know who she was. She was just this woman. And I remember always clinging to my mum when I was around her. And, you know, and she'd long hair in a bun. My mum always had short hair. She'd like this big, thick, grey, long hair in a bun. And she took it down one day and I was like, I ran over to my mum. I was like, oh my God, who's that? But anyway, she died when I was around 4. And I remember mum telling me, I mean, she was devastated. It was really frightening seeing my mum in that state. And I knew something was seriously wrong. And so my granny had died. And I knew it was something rare. You know, mum loved her. And my dad was comforting her. But I was told she'd gone to heaven. And I prayed. I used to always say my prayers every night. And mum explained that, you know, I came from God as a baby. I came from heaven. That's where I came from, even though I knew there was something to do with the hospital in there as well. So I came from heaven, and now my granny has died and gone to heaven. So I kind of wanted to be with the angels. And I remember I couldn't understand how I came from heaven and then you go back to heaven. I don't know how I processed this, but I remember saying to mum, I want to go back. I want to be in heaven with the angels, Holy God and the angels. And yeah. And then, you know, growing up in the Catholic faith, all of our kind of prayers and all of our faith is to do with, you know, Jesus died on the cross for us, for our sins. So we're born with sin and or born without sin. I actually think we're born with sin. But then, you know, and then we're christened and we make our communion, confirmation, all of this. And our whole life is about praying and living in a way to go to heaven. But I couldn't get the bit where that's where we've come from. Like, why couldn't we stay there? So I was always obsessed with being in heaven and going to heaven. And that started around 4 or 5 and never left me. And then it got really bad when my dad died. And my dad died when I was 12 and got sick when I was, for the first time when I was around 6 or 7, but I wouldn't have really noticed that. But then he got sick when I was around 10, 11. I started getting migraines because I knew there was something not right. So that's where I come from, you know. So I was born into a family of 3 boys and 3 girls. And they were all hoping for a girl or a boy, you know, because it was 3 and 3. And what was I going to be? And my mum said a beautiful thing to me. She said, I knew, and I was so delighted when you were born, a little girl, I knew you'd be my best friend. And she was right. I was her best friend, and she was my best friend and is my best friend. God bless my beautiful mother. I love her so much. So that's all. I'm going to, I'll continue tomorrow. So I wish you all a lovely Easter Saturday evening, and I will catch up with you again tomorrow. So good night. Take care. Bye.